Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Careers in Data Analytics. My name is Matthew Garcia. I'm representing the Shavit Glaubeck Center for Career Strategy and Professional Development, also joined by our Analytics Club, represented by Miriam Rabinovich and several of her peers, as well as students interested in the field. I'm joined by four very established professionals who are going to be providing some insight and guidance to you all today, as well as making time as a part of the program to do a bit of micro networking where students in the audience will be able to interact a bit with these professionals for a short period of time and pick their brains on a one-to-one basis in a way. So without further ado, I would like for our panelists to kind of do a brief introduction of themselves, but also including a bit, not just about their role, but about a week in their role. So David, why don't you start us off, introduce yourself, and tell us what a week in your role is like.
All right, thank you everyone for coming, and I know it's a little late in the day. So I currently work at an agency. One of the big advertising agencies is called Omnicom. Specifically, I'm in their health group. It's known as Omnicom Health Group, and then within the health group, they have a lot of different sub-agencies. So my sub-agency is called SSCG. And we work directly with the major pharmaceutical companies. So we work with Pfizer, who's right across the street over there. I work with Amgen, who's out in California. But we basically cover all the big pharmas. And we are just on the phone with those representatives, those brand representatives all week long, telling them how their campaigns are performing, issuing them guidance on how they can make their campaigns more comprehensive and reach the target audience that they're looking to reach. And we're studying the data probably half the week. We're also studying different ways to make the data easier for our advertisers and our partners to understand. And a lot of that means streamlining the data. So like right now, I'm working on a big project where we want to get away from working all day in Microsoft Excel and kind of shifting all that data into something called Datorama. Datorama is one of the hot new platforms that a lot of the analysts are using now. It makes it a lot easier to slice and dice your data, to analyze your data, and it's very automated, so your clients can just go in real time and see how their campaign is going. Honestly, a week consists of a lot of meetings, so you're trying to balance that. We even have a rule, like try to make your meetings as short as possible. Like it's okay to make just 15-minute meetings or 10-minute meetings, because everyone was getting so bombarded with meetings and they needed to dig into their actual work. But even with that rule, we sometimes find ourselves bombarded by meetings. So the truth is there are heavy weeks where you can be doing a lot of meetings throughout the day, and then you kind of have to get to your work at night. But it is a very flexible type of job. So if, and I think this is probably the case for a lot of my peers here. So if one day you have a lot of meetings and you're working extra that night, but the next day it might be a little less heavy. So it does go in a little bit of an ebb and flow depending on what's going on with your campaigns.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Ms. Khan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it's like to work a week in your role?
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Rebecca Khan. Currently, I'm an analyst at Analytic Partners, which is a mid-sized consulting company that specializes in marketing analytics. So I actually just started this role like 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to give more of an overview of like my week at previous job, which also overlaps with types of projects I was going to do. So similarly to David, I previously worked at an agency, media agency as well, working on the analytics team. So I started more on the business intelligence side. So that would be like, again, like he said, monthly campaign reporting, analyzing the data, kind of generating insights, seeing how the marketing campaigns did and figuring out recommendations, and then ultimately presenting that to the client each month. And then a few months in, I switched more to the advanced analytics team. So they were more focused on predictive analytics. And so what that encompassed was like econometric modeling, lots of marketing mix modeling. So building out regression models, figuring out either what marketing efforts or non-marketing efforts had an impact on sales, and figuring out reasons why it affected sales, and then also figuring out how sales are predicted for future years. And so that takes, sometimes 5 to 6 months, that whole project. And then once the modeling is done comes the optimization part. So running simulations and scenarios to figure out the most optimal marketing plan to suggest to the client, with factoring in, constraints that they have and figuring out how to maximize their sales while also hitting the targets that they have and minimizing risks. So a combination of that and modeling takes about 6 to 7 months. So definitely a lot of the year. And then similarly, at the same time, a big push for like a lot of these companies are doing is streamlining processes and automating systems and stuff. So always trying to figure out how to get away from doing, QA in Excel or basic repetitive processes and either writing QA scripts in R or SQL, any tool that to speed up that process, or transition a lot of the PowerPoint that we make monthly into Tableau dashboards, interactive dashboards, which, the clients and the users, it's way more user friendly. And that was definitely a big focus. And I would say that's like a general, not even a general week. Every week is different, but somewhat of an overview of what a week can look like.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Mr. Du, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what it's like a week in your role.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me in the first place. My name is Ashton. I'm the senior data analyst at WeWork, which I believe is pretty much known to everyone. So my week in my role, so at WeWork, I work for the technology department. So data team is under the WeWork China technology department. And we are running on Scrum schedules. Every 2 weeks, we plan tasks for each team member. And then we start working on different tasks within that 2-week range. And at WeWork, we have a lot of product teams, PMs, product managers, backend engineers, and front-end engineers. So for each product team, they're working on different kind of products, either online products or offline products. So as a data analyst, we support different product teams. We try to use data to help them make decisions or monitor different metrics. And not only for product team, right now, we are also supporting like the whole business, so including sales, including like D&D or even some other departments for WeWork. So every week we start with assigned tasks. We start to work on data, trying to use data to do some reports, either using different analytics skills to generate some reports. At WeWork, I also engaged a little bit more in data engineering, so that from the very start, I start to research in different databases, understand different tables and fields, and then generate, use primarily using SQL to generate tables in data warehouse, and then use Looker or Tableau to generate dashboards for business team. So every week I would receive different kinds of requests from product teams. Data team would go over with different requests and then settle down the goals and what we need to do, who needs to be take on these different tasks. Then we start, proceed. So that's how everything works at WeWork. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Goodman, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what it's like a week in your current role.
Yeah, so my name is Jacob Goodman, and I work for B&H Photo Video. They're an online e-tailer. And I manage the content support division, which encompasses project management, business analysis, and a service desk team. And, for that team, the weekly responsibility is obviously it's a wide range there, but it really involves mostly figuring out what the issues are and figuring out how to get to a solution. And so that can be, if we're working on an internal tool, knowing who the developers are, how the data is structured in that tool. So when something goes wrong, how to connect that to the resource that can fix it. collecting requirements for reporting. So, my boss comes to me and says, hey, I need these kinds of numbers in this format, and getting those requirements built out, maybe doing a prototype in SQL or something like that, and getting it to the reporting BI team who can schedule it and get it on the regular cadence that we need it on. It's definitely wall-to-wall meetings, like I think we've heard from a lot, because it's all about connecting to people and really making sure you're hearing what the issues are and getting to a solution.
Excellent. Thank you so much. For this next round of questions, I have individualized some of these inquiries for each of you to answer based off of your experience. So starting back on Mr. Goodman, what significant ways have your graduate studies in the data analytics and visualization program helped with your first 6 months in your business analytics role? And who may benefit most from those graduate studies?
So I should have probably mentioned that before. I am also a student at YU. I'm pursuing a master's in business analytics and visualization at Yeshiva. And I have to say, I was in this role before I started my master's studies. I got into the master's program because I wanted to make sure I was really building out those skill sets so I could continue to grow, even though I'd gotten into this role already. I would have to say that there's been almost every class I've taken, there's been a moment where it's been like, oh, that's the right way to do that thing that I've been doing backwards around, trying to do it like this for months. And so, the company, B&H, has really benefited, I think, from that, but I've really benefited as well of being able to grow and do things and learn different ways and better approaches to doing a lot of the problems that I was already working on.
As a follow-up to that, would you say that the degree is a essential or non-essential part to your success and to maybe other students' success if they're considering going for a master's degree?
I will say that, I think it has really continued to keep the door open to me. I probably was nearing where I could have gotten without continuing to grow those skill sets. Maybe I would have been able to do it on my own, but I felt I needed a more structured environment to support that. And so that's why I came to the program.
Awesome. Thank you. Mr. Du, what would you say are the most valuable skills that you've developed through each of your analyst roles that our audience should be working on developing right now as students?
I would say primarily 3 skills. One is SQL. The second is a good understanding of database. And the third, I think, which is also very important, is the communication. So as data analysts, I really use SQL quite a lot, and we work on my previous company, and really to use SQL to not only generate the data you want to analyze, but also use SQL to do ETL modeling, the data engineering modeling. So I would say SQL is definitely a must based on my experience. And then second, as data analysts, a lot of other companies, data analysts may just use the data. They don't have to worry about the source of the data. But at WeWork, I found it essential to understand database as well. A good understanding of database, how the business data is flowed into different systems or into data warehouse, how it's being captured, and then it will help you to analyze the report, analyze and present your report. And third, the communication skills. As data analyst, I have to communicate a lot with product teams, product managers or stakeholders, and sometimes even other engineers. So say, for example, I need to communicate with product managers to narrow down the metrics, how we are going to measure different products, the success of our products. And then also need to present different reports to stakeholders or product managers. By working with, say, back-end engineers or front-end engineers, I also have to work, communicate with them about different data sources, the meaning of different fields, how it's been generated, the logics. So that all really help you or help a data analyst to understand the data presented and how I can process all these data. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Ms. Khan, 2-part question. How has your BEMA degree prepared you for a career as an analyst? And in what ways might alternative degrees have some transferable value to the field?
Okay, so two-part question. So I'll answer the BEMA degree part first. So in terms of preparing me for an analyst, I definitely feel that the major has prepared me in many different ways, both improving my technical skills and my soft skills. Specifically for technical skills, I mean like R and SQL, which I learned in classes, and obviously Excel. I use that on like a day-to-day basis to apply to a lot of my work at hand. So that has definitely been really helpful. And I definitely have learned all the building blocks and basic knowledge from my coursework. And then also now that, I work more in modeling and use regression all the time, just understanding what makes a good model, how to interpret variables, and how to understand a model. I definitely have learned all of that from my classes, and I really do apply that on a day-to-day basis. And I feel like I had a really good solid foundation from the courses. So for technical skills, I would say they do a solid job at giving you a big picture of what you need to know. And then in terms of soft skills, something which I realized only after I graduated and started working that I developed was critical thinking skills. And I think the major actually really helps you develop these and is also critical when it comes to being a data analyst. And under that realm, I think that includes, like he mentioned before, being a good communicator, being a creative thinker, being open-minded when it comes to solving problems, and then your just ability to solve a problem. And basically, like, you never know a client's going to come to you or what question they're going to ask or what problem you're going to have to solve. Like, you can never predict what they're going to ask, but you can never like say like, oh no, like I don't know how to do this, or we can't do that. Like, you always have to basically figure out an answer to give them or a solution to provide. And I think in order to do that, you basically need to take the basic knowledge that you know and be creative with what you do know and start building on that to come to a final solution and an answer to their problem. And I think the major kind of trains you to think in that way because, in a lot of the classes, like nothing's necessarily like spit back or straightforward. I think they definitely do a good job at teaching you the basic knowledge you need and the building blocks. And then when it comes to the assignments at the end or the projects or the tech tests, you're basically required to take the basic knowledge that you were taught in class and then go to the next level or put it all together when it comes to a final project. And ultimately, that's what's going to be expected of you as well as an analyst. Like, you probably will never know how to do something 100% or how to answer a question or solve a problem 100%. But I think as long as you know 60% or 70%, that is enough for you to start rolling with the process of how to solve it. And then, asking other people questions or researching or improving whatever skill you need will end up getting you to the rest of the way to solve that problem. And then you'll ultimately be able to give an answer to the client. So I definitely feel very prepared actually coming out of the major. And I feel like I've grown a lot, and the degree gave me a solid foundation to be able to do that. And then in terms of alternative degrees that might have transferable value, I think that definitely kind of depends on what route you want to take within analytics. There's definitely many ways you can apply analytics. So right now, I obviously do more marketing analytics, but let's say you don't necessarily want to be in a marketing world, but you still want to do analytics, but maybe more in a finance setting, then I would definitely recommend like taking finance courses in tandem with the analytics major to do more financial analytics. That would definitely help you. Let's say you do like marketing and don't necessarily want to get so in the weeds of analytics, then and you want to do more like strategy or storytelling of the data, then I think more marketing classes would be very useful to you. And then lastly, if you do really like analytics and you like getting into the weeds of the data and using the technical skills and the programming, which I see myself like using more and kind of leaning more towards data science, then I would say definitely, if you can or you have time, like trying to take some computer science classes actually as like electives. I think that would have tremendous amount of value, and you can learn a lot more skills. Like there's definitely skills that I've picked up on or learned, which I didn't necessarily learn in any of my classes, which maybe they would have been covered in computer science classes. And now I'm kind of like using my time when I can for learning and development. So taking advantage of that, like in school, is definitely something I would recommend if you can.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Mr. Frund, I have another two-part question. First is, what have you done to make yourself a competitive candidate for each of the analyst roles that you've earned? And the second part is, what strategies should our audience use in their eventual job searches?
Yeah, these are two really important questions, and thank you for asking them. Um, I think every job has its own unique role, and every job is different. And Rebecca just mentioned that in her job, she's more of a data scientist. In my job, I'm more of a data analyst slash marketer. So for me, there was certain soft skills that were very important in addition to all the tools that we've spoken about on this call. For example, storytelling was very important. I'm talking to executives every day and kind of painting a picture for them of how their campaigns are doing. So I have to go in the weeds into the data and understand all the different trends that I'm seeing. But then when you're telling the story to a marketer or to a senior executive, you have to really be able to break it down to him in simple terms and get those key points out. Like you're basically giving him an executive summary. So you basically have to say, okay, these are the high level things that are happening, because he only has 10 minutes for you, so you have to pick out the most important things to tell him and the most important maybe optimizations or changes that he needs to make in order to get his campaign going in the right direction. And in order to meet, in my case, we're trying to target specific doctors and HCPs in the oncology field. So we have to be able to help him get directly to the audience that he wants to get to. I think Jacob mentioned something very interesting before when he said he's currently taking classes. I think that's a really good way to go. I think you should always supplement what you're doing in your undergrad. When I came out, I was a finance major and I started in the banking industry. And then I made a pivot towards data analytics, which is not such a hard pivot, but I had to get a lot more familiar with Excel. I had to get a lot stronger with it. So I started taking courses on my own. I paid a little money out of pocket to really take extra courses on top of what I took at YU under Professor Jorish, who was tremendous. And that really helped me be able to make that pivot from finance to data analytics. And I was kind of ready for that first role when I did that. As Mr. Du mentioned, a lot of the roles are more data science related. So for those roles, you'll want to get familiar with tools such as SQL or R, and you really want to dig in. It could be a little overwhelming at the beginning, but once you dig in and really treat it like a full-time job almost, treat it like you're going to be tested on it, you'll start learning it very quickly and it won't be that overwhelming. And I know it sounds overwhelming because it's kind of a little like coding at the beginning, but I believe anyone can do it, especially the students at YU. And then in terms of making yourself stand out as a candidate, so first of all, it's really important to understand who you are, understand what your skills are, what you bring to the table, what you're strong at and what you're weak at. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to apply to jobs that you're not ready for, because then you're going to find yourself in a position where you're just, you want to be able to perform at the highest level. So you really want to identify the jobs that are a great fit for you. And then remember, they're also interviewing to be with you, to have you in their company. You're a big asset towards them. So you want to make sure that they're going to be a good team that you want to work with, and identifying who's going to be your boss and who's going to be your peers, and whether these are individuals that you think you will work well with and you will grow well with and will have your strongest career interest in mind. I think that's all really important. I think all of us who've been in the working field have had peers or bosses that we've loved and worked great with, and then other ones that maybe wasn't as perfect of a fit. And I could tell you, if you could identify that fit beforehand and say, oh, this is, our personalities really jive and we will work well together, you'll have a lot more success on the job and you'll be able to grow a lot more on the job. In terms of tools, I'm sure you guys use it all the time. I used to work there. Indeed.com is probably the #1 tool you can use. Really great for helping you identify the right jobs for you. It'll help you identify what skill sets you need at the job. And it's a little bit of a numbers game sometimes because there are a lot of applicants. So obviously you have to have the great resume, but you also might have to apply to 10, 15, 20 jobs before 3 or 4 of them respond back to you. And then once you're on the interview, you really become a storyteller. So that skill is super important on the interview. What is your story? What is unique about you? What is special about you? Bring that all out to the table. Be calm, be pleasant, because the mannerisms are very important. They're not just going to look at what you're saying, but how you're saying it, how relaxed you are as you speak. Those are all important nonverbal cues that are taken into account. So practice that. Maybe take a video camera and watch yourself on a mock interview. I know we did that a lot in YU, and I found that to be very helpful. And just do the regular things you're supposed to do after that. Follow up. Let them know how excited you are about the opportunity, and study what the job is, so that when the interview comes, you know what kind of questions they might ask, and you'll be ready for that interview.
Terrific. Thank you so much for sharing all the information, everyone. Before we get into the networking portion, a few housekeeping orders at first. For the members of the audience, essentially what you're going to be experiencing is being broken up into breakout sessions that you'll be accompanied by one of these panelists. And you get about 10 minutes or so to chat with that professional. You'll be in small groups with your peers to ask some questions. You can follow up on these topics. You can ask them about questions relevant to what they've answered or what other panelists have answered, to have their take on it, and really just get an opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation. There will be a team member or a representative of the Data Analytics Club in the room with you as well, to kind of move the conversation along as needed and to let you all know when the room is going to come to a close. Once it comes to a close, everyone's going to come back into this space for a quick wrap up. So what's going to happen now, just before before I press the button to launch the rooms, I'm just going to stop the recording really quickly.